Why not? Party on, dudes. There's your yawn right at the beginning. That's what I'm talking about. Get it out of
That's
the way.
how you know it's our video.
That's how. Yeah. That's. If you don't see the yawn, then you know it's a counterfeit.
Yep.
Yeah,
We did have that one.
Did you make it all the way?
I don't know. I think I yawned like close to the end because you started talking a lot.
All right. Anyway. So we have a prayer of somebody that you maybe haven't heard of. Maybe you did, because his prayer actually was kind of famous about 10 years ago. If you were paying attention to the religious circles and religious books.
I wasn't.
Well, yeah, you were what, like 9 years old. So.
Yeah.
But there was a book actually written about this prayer. So this is 1 Chronicles chapter 4. And we're going to be looking at a few verses there, like 5 to 10. The prayer is actually in verse 10. But we're gonna look at a little bit of the background there. But this is a guy by the name of Jabez. Maybe you've heard of the prayer of Jabez. It was a big deal. This is the only time he's mentioned in the Bible. So we were about to get started good on our Wednesday nights of studying some of those little known characters of the Bible. Here's one of them. This is all he's known for, and this is all we know about him. Mm-hmm. There's no follow-up. There's no information about who his descendants were or anything on further down.
I think because of that, there's some interesting lessons that we can learn from this prayer. So
absolutely some interesting lessons.
Get into it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Well, let's start with, first of all, this is in Chronicles chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, it starts a list of the different clans or family groups that are part of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the background for who these people are. Because I don't want you to think
these are all Judahites.
Yeah, because when you start in verse 5, it mentions Asher, which is different than the Asher that was one of the sons of Jacob and one of the tribes. This is an Asher that was a descendant of Judah. So, all right, let's go.
Asher, the father of Tekoa, had 2 wives, Hilah
and that's
Merari.
Not Tekoa like the river that we have here. It's spelled different. It's spelled different.
I think it's spelled.
No, it's Tekoa.
Yeah. Hilah and Naara. Naara bore him Ahuazam, Heifer.
He read over all this. He said he knew how to read these.
And I did not say that.
You said you were ready.
And Hahashtari. These were the sons of Nahara.
There's nothing more fun than reading the names in Chronicles of all these people. That's trying to pronounce all these names.
The sons of Hilah, Zereth, Ishhar, Ithnan. Cause fathered. Wait, where'd Cause come from?
And that's just a different. I don't know. Okay. Somebody else. I mean,
Cause
is one of her other. I mean, this is all the sons of Hilah. Cause is one of them.
Okay. Cause fathered Anub, Zobibah. That's a fun name. I like that one.
I like Jobab better, but that one's not bad.
I mean, come on, just be like, Zobeba, get your butt over here.
And then there's the woman named Noah, and her sister Hogla. I mean, there's some great names.
And the clans of Aharhel, the son of Harum. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called his name Jabez, saying, because I bore him in pain.
Okay, so let's look at this background a little bit. So these are all these sons of Hilah, and Hilah was married to this Asher, who he had 2 wives, and one of them was this Hilah, and she had a bunch of kids. One of those kids was Jabez, and it says that he was more honorable than his brothers. He was better. He was a more righteous fellow. He was more interested in doing what God wanted him to do. He was a better Israelite, a better Judahite than all of his brothers in this family group. And it's interesting, the word Jabez apparently has something to do with what is a double yawn day. His mother,
the first time.
His mother names him Jabez because I bore him in pain. And so she'd had all these other children. Did she not have pain with them? We wonder what happened with this guy. Was he breech? Was there some other sort of problem with the pregnancy.
Maybe there was like an emotional.
Was it an
problem
emotional
going
pain?
on
Yeah.
at the time, or a spiritual
Or
problem?
spiritual pain. We don't really know exactly what the pain
Mhm.
was, but that pain was serious enough that it actually works its way into his name.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And that's always interesting to me that, as far as I know, most of the cultures at that time, Hebrew, Greek, even the
Egyptians
Romans
and
did as well. Like the names were kind of play on word for something that was going on at the time.
well, I mean, here in the Native Americans did the same thing.
Yeah,
They
but
named,
it's like
they name their kids things that
nowadays, I think
we just like. Oh, that's a cool name, so let's just call them
I
that.
think
and
the
we don't think about it.
Chinese still do that.
Yeah, I think some of them do. I know your mother
Some of the
talked about,
Asian
different- they're like-
cultures will
names
still
are
do
like
that.
Shadow and Bumblebee and stuff like that.
But even a bunch of other
Most
places,
of Western culture
it's
doesn't.
just
doesn't really
oh
do-
well, that was my grandpappy's name, so it's my name.
Yeah, the lineage
Yeah.
name is.
Yeah,
And that was becoming a common thing by the New Testament times. Remember when Elizabeth got pregnant with John the Baptist? They were, oh, he's going to be named John, and everybody's like, but wait a minute, Zechariah, there's no Johns in your family. Why are
Yeah.
you naming?
yeah,
Because you ought to name him after somebody in your family. So that started being even then a kind of a common thing where
Yeah.
they named them after somebody rather than naming them something specific to them. But it's interesting how many of these names, yeah, they had something to do with what was going on in the people's lives when this child was born. I think especially when we're talking about Israelites, I think especially about Jacob and Rachel and the baby of the family. When she died giving birth to him, she got to see the child before she died. She named him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. But his father couldn't stand that. He didn't want that constant reminder, and he didn't want his son to be the son of sorrow, and so he changed the name to Benjamin, which is son of my right hand. And so gave it a different meaning and turned it a completely different direction. But yeah, the names were so important. But can you imagine? I mean, if this was, because I bore him in pain, could also be translated because he gave me pain in birth, or something like that. I mean, you imagine being this guy and running around, and your name is I caused my mom pain. I mean, that's. Wow, that's not a pleasant name to be saddled with your whole life, but fun to think about some of these things and interesting the way we do or don't think about names and the meanings of those names when we choose them in today's society.
Mm-hmm.
So this pain though is going to come back up again.
It is.
As we move along.
So, this is the verse that contains the actual prayer. Jabez called upon the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my border, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from harm, so that it might not bring me pain." And God granted what he asked. So, a few interesting things there. As God...
I get so distracted by that. That was just a couple verses ago.
As Dad mentioned just a second ago, that pain comes up again. And it's interesting that Jabez uses the idea of harm and pain, which are connected to his name, in his prayer to God. And it's one of those cool, poetic, almost artistic forms of prayer that we kind of miss out on today.
Yeah.
I can't really use my name in a prayer. Like, I know the meaning of my name and I could use that.
I mean, I suppose you could say, help me as an Alexander not to be like Alexander the coppersmith that caused trouble for Paul, or so, I mean,
but just in general, I can't come up with something beautiful and flowing like this.
Yeah.
Where he just uses the meaning of his name twice in the prayer to convey exactly what he needs in the moment. And I know part of that is just because of what his name is. His name is
Yeah,
connected to pain.
probably a little easier.
And
in
so
this
that
setting.
makes it a little simpler, but still, that's a beautiful concept. The other thing I want to see is, as we talked about earlier, this guy was, as far as the Bible's concerned, and as far as we know, basically nobody.
Yeah.
We don't know who he is. We know where he came from because he's in the list of genealogies. We don't know where he went after that. We don't know what's going on in this situation that's causing this prayer. We know basically nothing about him. And yet, he gives this prayer to God, and we know he was an honorable, righteous man more so than his brothers. He gives this prayer to God, asking for help, asking to be kept from harm, asking that his territory would grow, and God grants him that.
And it's actually interesting because actually before his actual prayer, there's kind of, I guess, foreshadowing a little bit, because back in chapter 2, as it's describing some of the different things, it says the clans of the scribes who lived in Jabez. This is a place. So is this a place that's named after him? It possibly could be. He asked for God to enlarge his border, so it could be that this is where the Kenites, it says, lived there. But it's possible that this is related in some way to him asking for this prayer for his borders to grow, and maybe it became a place where even there was a clan of scribes who probably copied the scriptures and things like that. So, even though he's not somebody who's famous, and the fact that we don't have to be somebody who's famous. We've studied about different prayers by Moses and Abraham and David and Solomon and all these different, we've studied all these great kings and leaders of God's people, and Abraham, the friend of God, and all these things, fathers of nations. But here's a guy who's not that, and yet he can come to God in prayer, and he can have God hear his prayer and answer his prayer. And that should give us some encouragement that can happen for us too. God's willing to listen to our prayer, even though we may be nobodies as far as the rest of the world is concerned. And that's important.
And that reminds me of a Doctor Who quote where his companion or somebody he's with says that someone isn't important. And he says, not important? That's surprising to me. All of time and space, all the places I've gone, all the lives I've
in
lived,
900 years.
In 900 years, I've never met someone who wasn't important.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah, and even if we're not important to, the whole world, they don't know who we are, we're important to someone. We're important to our family, we're important to our friends, we're important to our coworkers, and we're most importantly, we are important to God. Jesus talks about this a number of times. Even the hairs of your head are numbered. That God knows you, and he cares about you, and he has all of the details about you. And so that we've got to remember that. And sometimes, we may feel insignificant. We may feel like, well, I can't sway the whole world like some big politician or some famous person, singer, actor, sports star or something. But we can influence those around us who will influence others, and that influence can have, over a period of time, even a greater impact perhaps than those famous people did.
That's true. You don't know how much a small thing in the present can affect things in the future.
That's something somebody always talks about, like things in the past that were little things that have made a big difference now. But then when they think about the future, they don't think, oh, if I could do a little thing now, They don't think about that a lot of times.
And I saw a short article about this recently where it was like, our modern day train tracks are
Right.
so wide because, and they're like, well, why are they that wide? Well, they're that wide because the wagon wheels were that wide and they were modeled after the wagon wheels. Well, why were the wagon wheels that wide? Well, it's because the ruts in the streets in Europe were that wide. Well, why were they set to be that wide? Well, it's because back in the Roman days, that's how far apart the horses were that would pull the
two
chariot.
horses.
And so that
walk in
that
that
was
path.
that wide. And it was like, why are rocket ships the size that they are? It's because they have to be able to fit on the train, and it's like the most amazing thing possibly in all of human history and ingenuity that has been created. Something that literally takes us to space is based
on how wide two horses behinds are.
Yep.
Yeah.
So don't think that something you're doing or trying to do in this time is not important, because the size of a space shuttle is based on a tiny insignificant detail from centuries ago when the Roman Empire was still in power.
Yeah, things are fascinating like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Certainly can be.
The way a tiny little thing can just cause so many ripples and effects that some people may never even notice.
Yeah, and you think about, I mean, there were so many things back, and we see these huge impacts, amplified over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, again, though, we don't think something as small as a prayer like this that God answers.
Yeah.
What difference could that make? I mean, we don't know what impact. If that Jabez place was named after him, and if it became a place of scribes, and those scribes recorded God's word, and they made copies, and they did, we have think about the impact that has. That could have led to the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were found because some kids were out throwing rocks into caves. It's little insignificant things, and they find all of these copies of Scripture.
Yep.
That are hundreds of years old, and they've been hiding in that cave, and nobody knew they were there until these young shepherds are out there throwing rocks and hit one of the jars and it breaks. And we need to realize how much in 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, how much the little decisions that we make today to serve God, to pray, to ask Him for blessings, to accept those blessings, to follow Him. Those, we may think, well, it's just a little thing. It's not a little thing.
It's hard to get into good habits, a pattern of growth, not even just spiritually, but really in any aspect of life. It's hard to get into a healthy pattern.
How many gym memberships are there January the 3rd that never get used the rest, after January's over, they never go back,
And see, the thing is, that's how good things start.
Yeah.
It's just one little decision at a time.
Yeah.
You're not going to wake up the next day and be a bodybuilder. You got to make those slow, small, steady dedications. And that's the hard part.
Doing it day in and day out.
But if you really want it, that pays off in the end.
That's what Jesus said. Yes, Jesus said you've got to give up your life for me or whatever. But he also said, take up your cross daily and follow me.
Yep.
And a lot of us are looking for that grand moment where we can, stand in front of a Colosseum like Polycarp supposedly did and proclaim, I've served my Lord for 86 years and he's never done me wrong. How could I deny him? And then be, eaten by lions or, burned in the flames or what have you. And we want that kind of a moment. And we think, but Jesus says, you just follow me every day. Take up your cross daily and follow me. It's the little day after day things, not the big grand gestures that are really going to make the difference. And that's something for us to consider here. It is interesting, though, with him, too. The questions, the things that he asks of God, seem to be kind of selfish as we look at it. He's asking, enlarge my border, bless me, be with me, keep me from harm so it won't bring me pain.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of thinking about himself a good bit,
kind of
doesn't he?
selfish.
I mean,
Yeah.
And especially with a guy whose name was, he caused his mom pain. Maybe he should have been thinking about ways that he could, not cause harm and pain to others. But it is our tendency, isn't it, when we're talking to God and we're to ask for things for ourselves.
For all we know, he was asking things for himself so that he could then further help others.
Yeah,
that's an important part of life. If you're not doing well, you're not going to be able to help other people do well.
Only the strong can help the weak.
Jesus talks about that. Take the log out of your own eye before you try and get a speck out of somebody else's eye. Sure. Sometimes you have to be a little selfish. You have to take care of yourself first, because then you're not going to be able to help someone else who does really need it.
Yeah. Oh, that's what they always tell you on the airplanes. If in the event of
Keep
the cabin
your tray
loses,
tables upright and in a locked position.
That's a different part, but it's in that same speech.
That's a good song.
If
keep your tray tables up.
Yes, airline Amy.
And your seat in the full upright position. That's it. It's keep your tray tables up.
And your seat.
Keep your seat in the full upright position.
I thought it was upright in locked position.
Full. Locked is too many syllables.
Anyway, in that same speech, they also say, in the event that the cabin loses pressure, the air mask will drop down from the ceiling.
And your seat can be used as a flotation device.
That's a different part, too. We're going to talk about the air mask part.
I thought that was part 3.
No, that's a different part as well.
Oh,
We're going to talk about the air mask part.
Well, if you fell
when the air mask
you would
drops
need
in,
the flotation
it
device.
says you put your air mask on first and then help children or the elderly or anyone else that might need it that can't do it for whatever reason, or somebody that's unconscious or whatever. You put yours on first, because if you're not breathing, you can't help other people. So you have to take care of those things yourself first, and that's not, in spite of what you said earlier, that's not selfish.
No.
It's not.
Well, that's the issue.
It's doing what's necessary.
Some people tend to think it's selfish, and if you think it's selfish, then sometimes you got to be selfish. Because I think a lot of times it's easier to just be like, okay, well then you got to be selfish, than to explain to people, no, it's not selfish. Because it's easier to just be like, okay, yeah, sure, it's the way you think it is, and you got to do it anyway, no matter what you think it is, than to explain to people, no, I'm sorry, your thinking's completely wrong. We need to go this direction.
I learned the same thing. The same thing is true of the zipper merge. Yeah, the cars. Yeah, when there's 2 lanes and one of the lanes is closing, and everybody like 3 miles beforehand gets all over in the one lane, and then it like really jams up traffic, and then they get mad at the person that's in the other lane, but all of most of the states, they've got it on their websites, use both lanes until the lane closes, because that way you've got 2 lanes of traffic to be in instead of all up in one lane backed up.
Yeah.
But people think that's selfish. They see the person using that lane, they're being selfish. No, they're trying to help everybody get through there faster. Actually, if we would use both lanes and then the zipper merge, just like a zipper works, both sides come together.
Come together.
Of course, that only works if there's enough room in both lanes for there to be the zipper thing.
This is true.
And in thick traffic, that's not always the case. But still.
Well, we've gone on a rabbit trail.
Oh, rabbit trails are good. Well, I mean, we went on a Jabez trail.
Didn't even have zipper merges.
So. No, he did not. But he did have borders.
Yep.
And he wanted them to be larger. Larger borders.
Hello, welcome to the border. Can I take your order?
Maybe he wanted to build a wall on his border.
Maybe.
But Jabez is an interesting person because of how little we know about him, and yet, I mean, this is in all these people, all these people. This is the only guy that it says he prayed to God. He called on God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's lists and lists and lists of people in this in Chronicles of all 12 of the tribes. This is the only one where it says, "Hey, he prayed this prayer to God." And I don't know why. Surely some of the other people prayed.
Yeah.
But for some reason, God saw fit to include his. Maybe it was just because the scribes lived in his town, so they wrote it. Right about the founder of our town. But it is interesting, too, though, that it does say, and God granted what he asked. Even though we might look at it and think, well, that sounds a little selfish. God granted it because he thought enough to come to God and ask for it. I mean, Jesus said it pretty clearly, ask and you shall receive. But if you don't ask, you don't get. Johnny Ramsey used to say, no one has ever gotten all that they could from God because no one has ever asked for all they should from God. Because again, we feel like it's selfish. Oh, I'm being selfish.
And it's one of those things where
God doesn't care about that. I don't want to ask him that. I don't want to bug him with that.
The Bible says that he can do abundantly above all that we ask or even think.
Yeah, or imagine,
I mean,
some translations say.
You just consider for a couple seconds everything that the human race has been able to come up with.
And imagine and think of.
And all of fiction and history and everything that's happened, everything that we've done and written, and he can do so much more than all of that put together. That's amazing.
Yeah,
and then is. In James, where it's like, hey, if you ask in faith, he's going to give it to you.
Yeah. Ask for wisdom. He'll give it to you. Jesus says, ask whatever you will in my name, and I will do it. I'll give it to you. Just ask. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you shall find. So Jabez, he did. He asked. He's like, hey, this is what I think would be good. I'm going to ask God. Now, it was up to God whether he granted it or not, and in this case, he did. So what do you want? What do you think would be good? What would you like to see God do? It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst that can happen is he'll say, no, not going to do that. And he may not say that out loud to you. But I mean, the worst that can happen is he doesn't answer the prayer the way you want it to be. And sometimes he doesn't. In this case, he did. But it never hurts to ask. All right. Any other thoughts? Anything else?
I think we're good.
I've enjoyed getting back to doing these prayer videos again.
It's been fun.
We've been doing them a little longer because of them being our devotional Bible study. Yeah. Wednesday night Bible study,
like
Sunday night.
This one's going to be Sunday night.
Yeah, this is our Sunday night.
Generally, you'd spend, an hour in church on Sunday night? We don't have the singing.
We haven't been, we've had some singing, but we've had singing and we've had, but we've been doing 30, 45 minutes, something like that on Sunday night, so that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we hope that this has been thought, hopefully you've thought about somebody, met somebody new maybe even that, and maybe you've read this section of Scripture, but you didn't really give it much thought. And maybe this has helped you to think about it a little deeper.
What we may need to do at some point on Sunday nights, I'd be okay with, is like you and Dwayne used to, where you just have two-person back and forth classes.
Back and forth.
Because, that's basically what we're doing here.
That's what we're doing here. And we just don't have the feedback from the third party out there that's just looking at us through the screen. That could be fun.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy that one on the history. We did history of Christianity.
I thought you were focusing on just Renaissance.
No, we were focusing on the Restoration movement, but we spent we spent probably like 3 weeks getting up to it because you kind of need some background
you need some background
where the religious
people
climate,
were at,
what the religious climate is at that point in time. So, but All right. So hope you enjoy this. Hope that it's been helpful to you and you've met and gotten to know someone a little better, and hope it'll encourage you to pray and ask God
For anything.
whatever you think is good for you and that you need. Ask Him. It never hurts.
And you may be surprised by his answer. Even if
Maybe.
you don't think he's going to give it to you, maybe he won't give it to you. Maybe he'll give you something better.
He might.
You never know what's
right.
going to happen when you come before God.
That's absolutely true. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Have a good week.